Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Scrimger, and I'm part of the team working to develop a new National Marine Plan 2 for Scotland. And today I'm going to be giving you an update on the progress that we've made so far in developing the plan. So today we're going to be covering what the National Marine Plan 2 is and what it aims to achieve, how we've been developing the plan, what progress we've made so far, how ScotMER can support the development of NMP2, and what our next steps are in plan drafting. As a quick recap, in Scotland, marine planning is governed under the Marine Scotland Act for the inshore region from 0 to 12 nautical miles and the UK Marine and Coastal Access Act for the offshore region from 12 to 200 nautical miles. We undertake marine planning via a tiered approach, whereby a national plan sets out the overarching policy framework to guide decisions on our marine space in line with national and UK-wide ambitions, such as those for economic prosperity, sustainable food production, and nature protection, among others. The national framework also sets the context for more specific types of planning for individual sectors and marine regions. Whilst marine planning is devolved to Scottish ministers, we do not produce plans in isolation from other UK-wide activities, such as the development of a strategic spatial energy plan. This plan seeks to set out options for how the UK energy system needs to evolve to achieve net zero and will be taken into consideration as we develop NMP2. We'll be working closely with the UK Government, devolved administrations and other relevant project partners as we develop NMP2 to ensure alignment and the best outcomes for our plan. So what are the aims of NMP2? As a quick recap, the plan will continue to support the UK-wide vision for healthy and productive seas and Scotland's Blue Economy vision that was published in 2023. The main aim of the plan is to support the sustainable use and development of our marine space in line with our transition to net zero and the need for action to address the twin crises. We'll also be looking to reduce the likelihood of conflict for marine space and safeguard, where possible, sustainable marine sectors of importance to coastal communities through our plan. The plan will set out an updated planning policy framework to guide licensing and consenting decisions, informing if, where, when and how development or use can take place in our marine space, and providing guidance on how to reach those decisions. NMP2 will continue to set the context for sectoral and regional marine planning, and as we develop the policies for the plan, we'll also be developing the monitoring and evaluation framework and implementation plan in parallel. How are we developing National Marine Plan 2? We know that working with those who rely on or live by our seas will help us to deliver a plan that is truly fit for purpose. Recognising this, we're taking a staged approach to plan development, sharing outputs as they become available and seeking inputs at every stage. We've been building partnerships with organisations across Scotland to help us reach as many individuals as possible as we develop the plan. We're using different types of event to help us collect feedback and test draft outputs, and these have included national marine planning forums, community drop-ins, and dedicated workshops, including those at the previous ScotMER symposiums. So what progress have we made so far? We've completed an appraisal of the existing National Marine Plan and of Scottish and UK Government commitments to identify key outcomes that can be supported through planning. From this, we've developed a set of draft high-level objectives for National Marine Plan 2. We've summarised all of our work and feedback collected to date into a planning position statement that we consulted on at the end of last year, and I'll speak more about this in the next slide. We've initiated the assessments to support our sustainability appraisal to help us understand the potential impacts on communities, sectors and the environment from the proposals in a draft plan. We've also completed a scoping exercise for the strategic environmental assessment that identified key environmental issues for consideration in the full strategic environmental assessment. For stakeholder engagement, we've updated our stakeholder engagement strategy with an updated timeline and have hosted a range of different engagement events, as I noted previously. This includes 2 National Marine Planning Forums in 2023 and 24, and a range of internal and external workshops on draft high-level objectives and individual policy ideas. We've also established a dedicated National Marine Plan 2 steering group to support the assessments. For monitoring and evaluation, we've identified a set of potential indicators for the framework, and we're currently developing the framework alongside our draft policies. So as noted, our planning position statement sets out draft high-level objectives for National Marine Plan 2 that represent the national level ambition for what marine planning policy can deliver. The objectives cover the themes of climate change and nature protection, supporting sustainable economic development, and protecting social well-being and access to the marine environment. The statement also sets out around 30 planning policy ideas, aiming to support action on the twin crises, improvements to the management of pressures, supporting sustainable development, limiting impacts on specific sectors from different activities, and how to improve decision making. The purpose of the position statement was to present an opportunity to collect feedback as early as possible on the proposed direction of planning policy for the draft plan. So how can ScotMER support National Marine Plan 2? So we've already collected useful feedback from our previous ScotMER workshops that has been used to inform our work to date on policy ideas and monitoring and evaluation. ScotMER outputs are also being fed directly into the evidence base for our assessments. Once the plan is adopted, any evidence or outputs generated through the ScotMER programme can be used to support evidence-based decision making. Additionally, this evidence can support adaptive management. What we mean by this is that as new evidence becomes available, this can be used to update any supplementary guidance that supports NMP2 implementation, allowing for a more adaptive and reactive decision-making process. So what are our next steps? Over the coming months, we'll be focusing on analysing all of the feedback collected from the consultation on our planning position statement and using this to inform the development of our policy ideas into planning policies and a draft plan. In parallel, we'll be completing our assessments so that we can identify any potential negative impacts from any draft policies proposed, as well as any opportunities to mitigate these impacts. The outcomes from these assessments will then be built into the design of the plan. In addition, we'll continue to engage with stakeholders throughout and as necessary, and as the timeline shows, we aim to have a draft plan and assessments out for consultation by the end of 2025. So that's all from me today. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions or would like any further information, please don't hesitate to contact us at nationalmarineplanning@gov.scot. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of the symposium.
Hi, I'm Fiona Monroe and I'm the team lead for sectoral marine planning within the Scottish Government's Offshore Wind Directorate. And today I'll be giving a brief overview of sectoral marine planning for offshore wind in Scotland and provide an update on the work underway to update the sectoral marine plan for offshore wind that was published in 2020. So at a high level, what is sectoral marine planning? Well, sectoral marine plans identify areas that are plan options for sustainable development, providing a plan-led approach that supports Crown Estate Scotland leasing rounds of the seabed and associated consenting and licensing. It's an integrated process that brings together various aspects, including things like planning, various assessments like the strategic environmental assessment, habitats regulation appraisal, and socio-economic impact assessment. And that's also combined with statutory consultation. These are technical assessments that assess various aspects of development would have on the marine environment and its users. Our sectoral marine plan that we're currently working on to deliver in 2025 will set the course for the overall delivery of ScotWind and INTOG projects, maximising deployment in Scottish waters whilst protecting marine users, biodiversity and our environment. So we have a sectoral marine plan for commercial scale offshore wind, and that's for projects that are larger than 100 megawatts in Scotland, and that was published in 2020. So that also covers the Scottish inshore and offshore waters. Now this plan identified 15 plan options for development and assessed for a maximum capacity of 10 gigawatts of development. So we're now in the process of updating this plan to take into consideration the ScotWind leasing round that resulted in seabed option agreements for a significantly larger amount of development than the 2020 plan had assessed for. So it's a larger amount of gigawatts that had been leased. So the updated plan also takes into consideration innovation and targeted at oil and gas. These are commonly referred to as INTOG projects, which there is an initial plan framework that was published in 2022, and that supported a leasing round by Crown Estate Scotland that resulted in 13 projects being offered exclusivity agreements. So that was a total of 500 megawatts of innovation projects and 5 gigawatts of targeted oil and gas. So targeted oil and gas projects supply renewable electricity directly to oil and gas infrastructure, whereas innovation projects are small-scale projects for innovation purposes, and so they're smaller than 100 megawatts in size. There's also strategic consideration for 1 gigawatt of installed capacity for potential sites for test and demonstration in the updated plan, and these are projects with the purpose of test and demonstration, such as for research on components or whole turbine technology in a sea environment, testing of technology types, or certification of offshore wind infrastructure. There's no current leasing round plans for test and demonstration sites, and this has been included in response to potential future interest for development of a small number of test and demonstration sites to support the offshore wind industry as it continues to modernize and mature. So the result will be that we're developing a new plan that provides the planning framework that covers both commercial scale wind and INTOG projects, as well as a small amount of test and demonstration to support Crown Estate Scotland's leasing rounds of the seabed and also the associated consenting and licensing. So this is the key stages of the process that we're going through currently. So last year we completed agreeing the methods and updating the assumptions for the assessments, as well as the evidence base where we could update that. And our contractors then drafted the first draft of these key assessments. So we're also working on plan drafting as well for the non-technical sections during that time. We're now working through the review process of those draft assessments and the draft plan in order to gain the approvals that we need to go out to public consultation, and that will be later this spring. So that will be a 12-week public consultation followed by a consultation analysis, which will inform the finalization of the draft plan and the appropriate assessment completed, as well as a derogation case if that's required, and that'll be in the summer. Then there'll be work to finalize and go through these final steps and then gain approval so we can progress to plan adoption. So that just gives a really high level view of that. So we've been making really good progress across the various work streams. So in terms of the draft plan itself, we have our non-technical chapters, which are currently under internal review. We also have our technical chapters, which we've received from our contractors, and those are also under review. There's the main assessments, and so these are including the strategic environmental assessment, the habitats regulation assessment, the socioeconomic impact assessment, the nature conservation marine protected area assessment, and then there's also the sustainability appraisal, which brings those all together. And these assessments are currently with our steering group for review and comment. And our steering group is a cross-sectoral group, and they've been feeding into the plan level assessments ahead of public consultation. So they've had the opportunity to comment on things like what the data has been used, the methodologies, and other aspects. In terms of the internal assessments that will be included in the consultation, these are complete, they're just pending approval, and these include the business and regulatory impact assessment and the islands communities impact assessment as well. And then in terms of what else needs to be in place for public consultation, well, we've been drafting the statement of public participation. We're finalizing the public consultation questions and progressing consultation logistics planning. So there's going to be quite a number of events in person as well as online. So there's quite a bit of planning involved with that, logistics. And we've also got our consultation plan, and that's also been drafted. In terms of next steps, so for our public consultation, we will need to get ministerial approval of the consultation plan. We'll also need to finalize the statement of public participation for publication and confirm details of the consultation events. There's also work to be done on the draft plan as we address internal comments and also combine it into one document. On the draft plan assessments, we'll be collating the steering group feedback, and then these will be getting addressed by our contractors so we can finalize those assessments. And then finally, we will need ministerial approval for the publication for publishing the documents for public consultation. So thank you, and if you have any questions, please contact our email address, which is on the screen. So that's sectormarineplanning@gov.scot if you have any questions. Thanks.
For those I have not met before, my name's Kirsten Watson and I am a project leader in the consenting section of the Marine Directorate's Licensing Operations team, or MD-LOT as we are known. We are the team who make recommendations to Scottish ministers on whether to consent or not offshore renewable energy projects. Our team makes decisions on marine licence applications in terms of ports and harbour development and other marine licensing projects, which will all be needed to deliver offshore renewable energy development in Scottish waters. MD-LOT are facing a significant increase in marine licensing and consenting applications. These are mainly associated with ScotWind and Innovation and Targeted Oil and Gas, or INTOG, Crown Estate Scotland leasing rounds, so we really need useful research outcomes now. ScotWind, INTOG and other offshore renewable energy projects, either consented and constructed or those in the application pipeline, represents a huge opportunity for Scotland to reach net zero, minimising climate change impacts and also securing a supply chain economic benefits. However, we need to make sure that the right projects are being consented in the right places. Scottish ministers want to protect the marine environment and other sea users, as well as facilitate good development proposals. MD-LOT base decisions on the information contained within Marine Licence or Section 36 applications, which include environmental impact assessment reports and information to support habitats regulations appraisals. We take account of the feedback provided by statutory and non-statutory consultees as part of the consultation process undertaken on individual applications. I can't stress how important this element of our work is in terms of providing Scottish ministers with a robust recommendation, which takes into account not only the applicant's submitted information, but also the views of a whole range of organisations, from those representing marine conservation, such as our colleagues at NatureScot, or organisations representing other marine users, such as the commercial fishing. So one of my asks for you all is to collaborate on research. We have to work with everyone involved. Academics need to talk to consultants preparing impact assessments, regulators need to talk to academics, researchers need to talk to developers and stakeholders, and so on. So seek the collaboration opportunities, publish your papers, make time to attend events, to communicate and share your knowledge. There might be some challenging conversations along the way, but please do embrace them. MD-LOT must also take into account the wider planning and policy framework set out by Scottish Government, so information contained within the National Marine Plan, which Louise and Rachel have told you about, and sectoral marine plans, which Fiona has provided an update on, other relevant government policies, including the Offshore Wind Policy Statement and Scottish Biodiversity Strategy, to name but a few. We want to deliver the best result possible for all interested parties, so please think about how your research can inform the wider policies. How can we achieve a win-win of developing offshore that benefit the marine environment and minimise impacts to all other users of our seas? So what else does the licensing operation team need from research? We need you all to help us make sure the best available evidence is provided and assessed, either through the sectoral marine planning process or through individual applications submitted and the associated consultation responses we receive. We need research outputs that can be easily understood and translated and used in these planning and consenting processes, and we need this now. I really can't stress this enough. MD-LOT are currently processing 4 ScotWind and 2 INTOG applications, with 2 determinations already made on INTOG projects. There are many more applications expected this year and looking forward to 2026 and 2027. Decision-making will not stop whilst research projects deliver. We will continue to make determinations on projects based on the best available evidence at the time, of course always making clear to Scottish ministers any gaps in evidence or risks that this presents. But decision-making on projects will need to continue. For MD-LOT, a focus on research is how to reduce uncertainty in the impact assessment submitted in the support of a wind farm or other types of application, and ensure that precaution is applied in the right places. MD-LOT want to ensure that all environmental receptors, be those ecological, physical or human, have been properly assessed, where available appropriate mitigations for any impacts are applied, and that Scottish ministers are basing their decision on accurate impact assessment conclusions. Another big challenge when assessing projects is potential cumulative and in combination impacts. The difficulty with much of our cumulative assessment is based on a lot of modelling, which needs to take into account uncertainty, and this leads to precaution, which is sometimes necessary. other times perhaps not. So my ask to you is that we all try our hardest to ensure that everyone understands how to interpret the outcomes of research projects. This includes an understanding of how uncertainty has been dealt with during any research and analysis, and a real understanding of the limitations of any research conclusions. For instance, the baseline data used and what ground truthing of modelled outputs has happened. With the increase in new offshore renewables projects, there is an acknowledgement that some projects will require to compensate for adverse effects. This comes with new questions for research and how we monitor measures put in place to compensate for these effects and how to demonstrate whether a compensatory measure in place is delivering against an existing impact. Work streams involving LOT and Scottish Government more widely are looking into this and including strategic compensation and marine recovery fund following changes under the Energy Act 2023, but further research will be needed on these topics going forward. I hope all of you enjoy and learn loads over the coming days in terms of ongoing research being delivered through ScotMER and other forums. It'd be great if you could all consider how we can turn research into outcomes and that can effectively be used in the forthcoming ScotWind and INTOG application processes and other projects. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the conference.
Hello everyone, my name is Lucy Trimble and today I will be giving an update on the Scottish Marine Energy Research Programme. This sits in the Offshore Wind Directorate of Scottish Government. In this presentation I will cover a brief overview of the ScotMER programme and our receptor groups, as well as giving an update on activity on the programme over the past year, a summary of our active research and a forward look to upcoming research. So what is the ScotMER programme? So the ScotMER programme is a Scottish Government initiative that works to identify and address key evidence needs which aims to inform the consenting and planning decisions associated with offshore renewable developments. The main objectives of ScotMER are to identify key evidence needs, undertake targeted research, and then communicate research outputs back into the renewable and academic sectors using several communication streams. This helps to ensure that the best available evidence is used when considering the planning and consenting decisions around offshore renewable developments that contribute to a low carbon future, whilst also protecting Scotland's marine environment and other marine users. The ScotMER programme adheres to the policies set out in Scotland's National Marine Plan, such as General Policy 19. This says that decision making in the marine environment will be based on sound scientific and socioeconomic evidence. The National Marine Plan was reviewed in 2021, and as we heard earlier, the Scottish Government is progressing an update with the National Marine Plan too. So turning to the ScotMER receptor groups, the ScotMER programme focuses on 7 key receptors. These cover ornithology, diadromous fish, marine mammals, fish and fisheries, benthic ecology, physical processes, and socioeconomics. Each receptor has a designated group consisting of a wide range of stakeholders that we regularly engage with. Members include representatives from academia, industry, SNCBs, ENGOs, other regulatory bodies, and internal Scottish Government colleagues. These include representatives from marine science, planning, and licensing. Through receptor group activities, each receptor has a designated evidence map which outlines key evidence needs in each respective research area. So we also engage more broadly across research programmes in this space to identify research synergies, reduce duplication of effort, and communicate ScotMER research outputs. For example, we are involved in feeding into the UK-wide Offshore Wind Environmental Evidence Register, or the OER. This continued linkage across the research landscape is essential given the fast-moving pace of research and the ever-growing evidence base. Additionally, we look to engage the wider stakeholder network via the annual ScotMER Symposium. This is a great opportunity to communicate ScotMER outputs and bring together our stakeholder network. The event has had fantastic attendance and reach over the last few years, with representatives from across all of these groups as well. Turning to ScotMER activities over the past year. So an update on ScotMER evidence maps. The evidence maps are developed with ScotMER receptor group members so that we have stakeholder input to help us understand key evidence needs and how they might be addressed. These maps are kept under continuous review and are updated and maintained throughout the year. The evidence maps underwent a review at the end of last year and were last published on the ScotMER website in March 2024. I'd also like to give an update on the ScotMER Projects Board. The projects board consists of a group of internal and external stakeholders who consider and provide feedback on project ideas which have been developed based on current evidence needs, as identified through receptor group activities. Working with the projects board members at this early stage also helps us to reduce possible duplication of effort with other research programs and helps us to maximise the benefits of ScotMER research as well as our value for money across the programme. The projects board process therefore helps us to prioritise project ideas and provide recommendations on projects for progression for the forthcoming financial year. At the time of last year's update, we had just submitted 14 project ideas to the projects board for consideration, and of these 10 were prioritised for progression to the next stage. These 10 projects were then carried through our internal Scottish Government financial approvals process to progress, and budgetary approval was given for this in May 2024. And in tandem, we progressed developing project ideas into fully scoped projects. This involved very close working with Marine Directorate SED colleagues, and also sought input from Marine Directorate LOT colleagues and colleagues in NatureScot. From here, we then carried our projects forward through procurement. Unfortunately, some of these projects were delayed in reaching this phase due to Scottish Government-wide spending controls, but despite this, we have been successful in awarding several new projects this year and have a further 5 now in various phases of the procurement process. We have also been able to progress several of our internally delivered projects with Marine Directorate colleagues. So to summarise some conference attendance over the past year, the ScotMER team engaged with several virtual and in-person industry and academic conferences around the marine renewable energy and marine science research landscape. In addition to this, we also run our own ScotMER Symposium on an annual basis where we engage with the community more broadly. The 6th ScotMER Symposium last year was a great success with more than 1,000 people registered from across 30 countries. The recordings from last year's symposium are available to review on the Marine Directorate YouTube channel. This year, we're also looking forward to holding an in-person day as part of the event in Stirling tomorrow. So turning to our recently published outputs, so evidence produced by ScotMER is all made publicly available via the Scottish Government website. This year, we published 9 ScotMER projects. You can access the full list of published projects and the reports on the ScotMER webpage. I'd also like to provide an update on our active projects. So at the moment we have 14 ongoing projects. Some of these are delivered internally and some externally. For a brief overview, across ornithology we currently have 3 projects focused on tagging efforts, as well as further in developing and maintaining essential tools for plan and project level EIA, such as the cumulative effects framework. Additionally, we are working with NatureScot to undertake colony monitoring with respect to key sites relevant to offshore wind development, as well as understanding the impacts of HPAI or bird flu. Across marine mammals, our active projects include the expansion of the Scottish Passive Acoustic Network. This is an extensive network of passive acoustic monitoring or PAM stations to collect long-term data on marine mammal distribution, relative abundance, and around underwater noise around the coast of Scotland and across ScotWind development sites. We've also recently awarded and started a project looking at secondary entanglement risk to marine mammals associated with ghost fishing gear becoming entangled with floating offshore wind infrastructure. For diatomaceous fish, we currently have 2 active tagging projects looking at salmonid interactions with offshore wind farms across the west coast and Moray Firth. And looking at benthic ecology, we have recently kicked off a project looking at invasive non-native species mitigation methods for offshore renewables, as well as progressing 2 active projects using eDNA methods. One is looking at the effectiveness and limitations of different eDNA sample collection methods and sampling strategies, which also has relevance to the fish and fisheries receptor group as well. We also have another focusing on the effectiveness of eDNA sampling methods versus traditional sampling methods for the ocean quahog. There are a number of ScotMER projects which are due to conclude this year as highlighted on this slide. I will not cover them all, but to touch on the cumulative effects framework, several work streams are currently being progressed by the Offshore Wind Directorate. These are to ensure that the CEF reflects the most up-to-date information when published, such as including key software upgrades and necessary data updates from the Seabird Monitoring Programme. Also, to ensure that the CEF is hosted on a temporary digital platform to allow pre-selected users to run a beta test version of the CEF, and to provide feedback on the framework before it is formally published. We are also progressing work around running the latest version of the CEF to quantify impacts on birds and marine mammals for the Sectoral Marine Plan Iterative Plan Review. As noted earlier, we also have a number of projects which are currently in the procurement process. Some of our new projects have now been able to progress through procurement, and although these are all at different stages, we are hopeful that we'll be able to successfully award and start these projects this year. So thank you for listening, and if you need to get in touch with the ScotMER team, you can email us at scotmer@gov.scot, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
And I'm from NatureScot, and I'm just going to give you a quick brief update on what we've been up to. So one of the reasons we've been asked to come is to provide a little bit of an update on where we're at in terms of resourcing. So back at the start of this financial year, so April last year, we received a large uplift from Scottish Government, so thank you. And this enabled us to expand our marine energy team from the small number that we were to a much more useful number. We're now up to 26 full-time equivalents directly working in the core team, and that involves managers, specialists and caseworkers. And we have some additional specialists sitting in other parts of the organisation, as well as recently implementing a new coastal and infrastructure team, which we hope will be of assistance in considering the work around ports and harbours, which will be obviously very close to the hearts in the construction and operation phase of offshore wind. However, in receiving that money from Scottish Government, we were asked to consider and explore options for cost recovery. So back in summer last year, we contracted Exodus to help us by scoping out options to look at cost recovery models and what we might need to do to implement such a scheme within NatureScot. The work was split into two parts. First part was actually looking at what resource we had, what work we were doing, and then projecting where we might need to have projecting what work would be coming our way and what we might need to do to deliver that demand. So the headlines from that first phase of work involve us being told that there's unlikely to be insufficient capacity to respond to the expected demand. Was identified that there was likely to be a shortfall of around 37%, and I would say that's possibly now even an underestimate given some further information that's come to light since that work was undertaken. And that is over the peak period that we were expecting the demand to increase from now really until the end of 26-27, although it'll go on for a long time after that. And it didn't just look at our casework advice role, so our advice on applications, pre-application, post-consent work, but it also looked at the work that we do around helping with the Sectoral Marine Plan Iterative Plan Review, but also our engagement in developing and writing guidance and our input into research programmes such as ScotMER. We're now working through the recommendations that we got around the cost recovery models, which were part of the second phase of the work. So they range from a sort of fee recovery process to a service level agreement to a discretionary advice service. As we work through those recommendations, we will come back out to industry. So thank you to those that were previously involved. We may well come back to you on certain aspects of this work. But I just wanted to highlight that given the predicted shortfall, and take every opportunity, you know what I'm like, I don't think that we can maintain the current service we provide. So I just want to leave that for you all to consider going forward. And then another plug, because I'm shameless that way. I just want to draw your attention to the workshop today at 4:30, when Nature Scott, myself, and Alex and Karen will provide an update on various aspects of the ornithological impact assessment. So what we do as part of the application process around seabird impacts. So do come along, as we'll be covering our guidance notes, what we've been doing around the sectoral marine plan iterative plan review, what we think may need to happen for ornithological impact assessment in the future, i.e. the next generation, as well as the current complex and evolving and engaging discussions around derogation cases and compensation measures. So hope to see a lot of you then. Thank you. And just to finish up, I will share my screen so that you can actually see who's now in our team. So let me just do that. I hope you can see that. So hopefully see you soon. Okay, thank you. Bye.